Welcome back to Comics Are Awesome, where we bring you everything awesome in comics. Well, it's been another year. Another year of new comics that have hit the stands. DC's reboot marches on, and Marvel's in the midst of a huge creative shakeup with Marvel Now! Explanation point. Anyways, so I've once again poured through all the comics that have come out this year, and I've tried to make a list of the top 5 best books that you should have been reading that came out this year. Hence the title. Probably could have written that less awkwardly. Okay, quick disclaimer time. First off, to make this list, you have to be an ongoing series with 3 or more issues starting in this last year. Number 2, in order to make this list, I actually have to have read it. I know that seems shocking, but I don't read everything as much as I'd like to, and there's a good chance that if something isn't on this list, I may not have read it yet. Number 3, this is just my opinion, nothing more. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Let me know. I want to see more great books, but not everybody's going to like what I like, and I'm not going to like what you like all the time. This is just me recommending stuff that I think you guys will enjoy. So, with that all out of the way, let's see what's made the list. First, I want to name 2 honorable mentions. First up is Captain Marvel, who would probably be number 6 on this list if it was longer. While the first story arc was a bit iffy in terms of plotting, having a time travel plot is probably not the best way to start a comic that isn't inherently about time travel. But the way Kelly Sue DeConnick writes Carol is handled amazingly well. She clearly has a grasp of the character, and one I enjoy reading. The other one is Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, which would have made this list, but the first and second issues only came out in December, and I kind of feel that to make this list, at least 3 issues should be out to make sure the quality remains consistent. But it's a writer whose work I've greatly enjoyed in the past, writing a huge cast on my favorite superhero team. I do recommend you check out both books if either sound remotely interesting to you. But what actually made the list?
One of your smile for me, little one, and this will be our year. Took a long time to come.
Number 5, Earth 2. I've talked quite a bit about DC's relaunch over the last year and a half, and I don't want to retread that. But if you were one of the people who was driven away from the DC universe thanks to the darker tones, less heroic heroes, and inconsistent continuity, then this is one book I recommend you check out. It's able to do this largely by not taking place in the DC universe. Well, it's a DC universe, just not the one where most of the currently published books take place. This is Earth 2, and things are different here. For example, in the first issue, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman die. I thought I said this was less dark. Didn't I? By removing the big 3 heroes, it sets the stage and the stakes for the new batch of guys to take their place. Most of these characters are new, updated versions of the Justice Society of America. The JSA were the heroes of the Golden Age, the spiritual or direct predecessors of the Justice League. I love the previous incarnations of JSA, but this isn't those guys. Similar in many aspects, but if you go in expecting the same JSA we got previously, you'll be disappointed. But what I love about this book is 2 things. First, there's an underlying heroic spirit to these characters. After the New 52 reboot, there's been a bit of a cynical and dark edge to many of the marquee heroes. I'm not here to argue if that's good or bad, but it's nice to have a book where being the good guy is simply stepping up to the responsibility given to you. While the main characters introduced thus far have all different personalities and temperaments, they all really are good people. You want to like them. Even the Atom, who is played up as the Army's blindly loyal soldier, you can tell he means well. The other thing I love is the world building. Because this universe is being all written by one writer, this alternate reality feels more consistent than the current main DC universe. This is a world that's rebuilding from a hugely devastating alien invasion and lost their greatest heroes. They're constantly on the watch for strange new activity that might be a sign of Darkseid forces returning. So when a bunch of new heroes appear, they're naturally suspicious. And that's kind of awesome. Earth 2 feels way more thought out than many individual titles, and being given room of saying it's an alternate reality lets them get away with changing things so that they feel fresh. The reason why it's lower on the list is because I'm not super fond of the costume redesigns. Flash's new costume in particular is an eyesore, and occasionally the dialogue suffers from being a bit too wordy or clunky. You honestly thought my sadness at my lover's death would be the opiate of my defeat? But that said, it's a fun superhero book, and probably the best new book I've tried from DC all year. Also, this version of Green Lantern kisses dudes, and as a straight ally, I'm totally down with that.
The warmth of your smile, smile for me, little one, and this will be our year. Took a long time to come.
Number 4. All New X-Men. The X-Men have changed a lot since I was in the prime of my X-Men days during the 90s. In many ways, it's almost unrecognizable to me as I remember it. I still buy a few books, like X-Factor and Wolverine and the X-Men, and I keep general tabs on the major happenings, but I'm no longer as deeply invested. But I have to admit, I was pretty curious when they announced this book. It's a weird time for Marvel's mutants. The good news, after several years of being on the verge of extinction, new mutants are emerging again. Unfortunately, everything else is kind of bleak. The X-Man Cyclops got possessed by the Phoenix Force, killed Professor Xavier, and even after being powered down, he broke out of prison and is palling around with Magneto as a mutant freedom fighter, while an overwhelmed Wolverine tries to act in Xavier's stead as the headmaster of the school. And then the Beast finds out that his mutation is slowly killing him. In a moment of desperation, Beast travels back in time and grabs the original 5 X-Men as teens in hope of having the younger, more innocent versions of the team confronting this more cynical version of the adult Cyclops and making him change his ways. That's kind of a crazy but awesome concept, and one filled with potential. The young versions get to see how much the world has changed since then. Jean is dead, Cyclops is a villain, Angel has basically had his mind and soul wiped away, and all that remains is a more childlike version of himself. Beast is blue, furry, and apparently dying, and Iceman, well, Iceman's got spiky bits now. Poor Iceman. Truly, his future is the most terrifying. Bendis handles the characters surprisingly deftly. I liked his Avengers run, but on more than a few occasions the characters' voices felt off or samey. Or he'd introduce a new character on the team to much fanfare and then not do much with them. That's not the case here. The characters sound like themselves. Storm sounds different than Kitty, who sounds different than Cyclops, who sounds different from Beast. As it should be. And while not every character has gotten a chance to shine yet, but considering we have the modern-day X-Men, the original 5 X-Men, and Cyclops' growing team of mutants, the fact that a cast this big has been juggled so effectively as it stands is a pretty miraculous thing. And there's some nice touches, as Bendis has clearly done his homework for this book, remembering oft-forgot details like Kitty's phasing messing up electronics, and Jean Grey didn't develop her telepathy until after she had joined the X-Men. It also helps that we have Stuart Eminem on art, and he is doing an amazing job. If you're looking for a mutant book that's more than a bit uncanny, you could do worse than trying something all new.
The warmth of your smile, smile for me, little one, and this will be our year. Took a long time to come.
Number 3. Peter Panzerfaust. The word reimagining has taken on a certain meaning nowadays that makes the hairs on the back of the collective internet's neck stand straight up. For many reimaginings, it often means dumping all the stuff that made the original cool and thereby missing the point. Or just another retelling of the same story that now has pointless spaceships or steampunk goggles tossed in. I hadn't even heard of Peter Panzerfaust until I heard a podcast interview with the writer, Kurz Wiebe. He talked about how he seemed to be very mindful of the potential problems with reimaginings. The overall concept, as the name implies, is Peter Pan set in World War II. More specifically, an American named Peter in France looking for a girl named Belle during the Nazi invasion, when he meets up with several orphans that he takes under his wing and tries to protect them. In addition to the Lost Boys, we also meet Wendy Darling and her brothers, John and Michael. Also, we get an SS captain named Haken, and Haken just happens to be the German word for hook, and there are certain memorable phrases that get mentioned. But this is primarily a World War II story that happens to have some Peter Pan trappings, rather than the other way around. And that's good. We know the story of Peter Pan. It's been told quite a bit. Instead, Peter Panzerfaust delivers an excellent World War II story that can use Peter Pan's energy to evoke our memories and feelings. And just because you know what happens in Peter Pan doesn't mean that you're going to see a one-to-one translation of those events here. At least so far, there's not been a whiff of any of the fantasy aspects. No flying children or pixies or omnipresent ticking crocodiles. I won't say it's realistic, but it's certainly more grounded. No pun intended. This book is simply amazing, and to both people who are fond of war stories or Peter Pan fans, I urge you to check this out.
The warmth of your smile, smile for me, little one, and this will be our year. Took a long time to come.
Number 2. Hawkeye.
What? I'm not biased. Okay, I might be a little bit biased, but I'm a huge Hawkeye fan, and I wasn't sure that was going to work in my favor. In my experience, hardcore fans are way easier to disappoint than to impress. And trust me, I'm very impressed.
Starting a Hawkeye book is kind of risky. Despite the Avengers movie taking on more money than actually exists, Hawkeye's previous attempts at an ongoing series, regardless of quality, never managed to set the world ablaze. And out of all the Avengers in the film, he received probably the least screen time. A new Black Widow series probably makes about as much or more sense than Hawkeye. But writer Matt Fraction and artist David Aja shot a bullseye with this new book. My apologies. Obvious pun was obvious. This title, as the recap page reminds us, is what Hawkeye does when he's not with the Avengers. He's almost never in costume, isn't always fighting supervillains, and heck, in at least the first issue, he doesn't even really use his bow for most of the story. Instead, it breaks down who Clint is. He's the guy who is constantly getting in over his head and still manages to escape through. And that's appropriate. He's a guy who fights alongside gods, technological geniuses, and Hulk, and he does it with a bow and arrow. Sure, he's got his trick arrows, but the book explores this well-meaning but bull-headed guy and his flaws. Clint is the guy who acts first and thinks later, and instead of that putting you off of him, it endears you to him. He's the guy who will take on Russian mobsters unarmed because they hurt a dog. He takes on a younger sidekick named Kate Bishop, who also goes by Hawkeye, for reasons that are too complicated to get into. But he needs somebody he can get along with, but also somebody he won't try to sleep with. And that's kind of endearing in a sort of messed up way. But I also love how the creative team plays with the storytelling, like Clint doing a mental checklist of all the steps required to prep and shoot an arrow in the amount of time it takes Kate to say 2 words. Or when you hear a foreign language, the word balloons represents Clint trying to identify the language rather than just translating it, or using Hawkeye's head to censor his junk. Hawkeye is not only well executed, but it serves as a great example of what comics are capable of.
The warmth of your smile, smile for me, little one, and this will be our year. Took a long time to come.
And the number 1 choice is Saga. Yeah, this book was the only choice for number 1 slot this year. I've reviewed both Runaways and Y the Last Man previously, and I think with this book, it's pretty safe to declare writer Brian K. Vaughan the closest thing comics have to modern-day Neil Gaiman. Other than, perhaps, Neil Gaiman. Whether it's finding out your parents are supervillains or you're the last living male on the planet, Vaughan has a way of finding the relatable core of a story no matter how bizarre or offbeat the situation is, and that's exemplified here. The setting of this book is weird. 2 alien planets are at war, but because they share the same orbit, and the destruction of one would ensure the destruction of the other, the war was outsourced and spread across the galaxy. The natives of Landfall have wings and are adept at technology, while the natives of Wreath are horned and practice magic. And other races have allied with one side or another, like the Robot Kingdom, which are basically anatomically correct people with silver skin and TVs for heads. There's also someone called the Stalk, and she has way too many arms, cats that can detect when people lie, ghost girls, and wooden rocket ships. This is the kind of thing that sounds like an acid trip, but Vaughan is a master of finding the elements that you can relate to. And I do think this is one you can relate to. Our 2 main characters, Alana and Marco, were soldiers on the opposing sides of the war who fell in love and had a child, and we see the complications arise from that. Both sides of the conflict see them as deserters and traitors, and the child as a prize to claim. So now they're on the run, trying to protect their daughter, Hazel. Despite all the craziness that surrounds them, they remain two mostly normal people. They argue, they put their foot in their mouths, and they love each other unconditionally. They get a babysitter, even if said babysitter is a ghost whose intestines stripped from her midsection. As somebody who's not a father, but now old enough that many of my friends and family are getting kids, I can kind of see this stuff as pretty universal. Even our villains remain, for lack of a better term, human. A bounty hunter known as the Will comes across as a kind of badass, but he still gets awkward when he's talking to his ex. Hell, I won't even say what happens when he travels to the pleasure planet of Sextillion. I'll say even for a bad guy, I was rooting for him there. Even Prince Robot IV is someone who we see reading a book while pooping. And other than wondering where the food goes in, there's nothing that demystifies the character more than that. Also benefiting the book is Fiona Staples' art. As far as the art is concerned, everything here is hers. The drawings, colors, lettering are all the work of one woman's vision, and it comes together in a beautiful storybook type quality.
This book defies labels. It's one part Romeo and Juliet meets the Odyssey meets a soap opera. And if that doesn't scare you away, you need to check this book out. But like always, this entire list was just my opinion. I want to know what yours is. Leave a comment below and let me know what your favorite books of the year were. And until next time, remember, comics are awesome, and we're going to get the word out.
One of your smile, smile for me, little one. And this will be our year. Took a long time to come. You don't have to worry, all your worry days are gone. And this will be our year. Took a long time to come. And I won't forget the way you helped me up when I was down. And I won't forget the way you said, darling, I love you. You gave me faith to go on. Now we're there, and we've only just begun. This will be our year. Took a long time to come. And this will be our year. Took a long time to